back to pure education, and he's doing it 5 days a week, which is great. I mean, it's working there, but it's very difficult to keep it going. It is a battle because they have it set up so if you don't dance with them, and I think this is a problem with our politicians, our colleges, and all these things that believe in their hearts, the majority of them believe they're trying to do what's right in education, and they're serving a system that is so corrupt for so long it's not repairable. And I think that's where we are with the church. The churches are the same way. Well, how are we going to exist if we have to pay taxes like a big corporation? So they go to a lawyer, get a 501c3, which, unbeknownst to them, it's got a clause in it that says you got to keep your mouth shut, boy, which is not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be the town crier. We're supposed to be the one who watches over government and says you're not doing right. Well, you know, if you tie their hands and shut their mouth, they're not going to do what they're supposed to do. So they get in trouble because they begin to blend in, or they become worldly so they can stay open, pay the light bill and the mortgage. It's a catch-22 almost. I mean, if you're going to be pure, you're going to pay a price. And that takes me back, if I might, to your Liberty Village, to the preparedness thing Mark's always preaching, to my saying, let's do it biblically. 200 years ago, we had it right. 200 years ago, the houses were smaller. The mother stayed home and nurtured the children. Dads went out and tilled the land and brought most of the produce to the local community. It wasn't processed through a major operation where it was heated with various kinds of chemicals and processes. We actually had better diets, better brains, better education, certainly better churches, and it worked. And the only way I think we get back to it, you just hit on it, we've got to educate. And you boiled two things down, but they come out one way. We have to re-educate a whole country, or at least the remnant that we represent, those who might listen and would like to have it a little better or back like it used to be. We have a problem that has a very difficult fix, but I think it can be fixed, and that is to back off from our buy now and pay later thinking that I got to have what I want when I want it, and realize that we need a community, we need a spiritual connection with each other, an awareness, your term, level of vibrational energy between each other in the community, so we're not fighting at each other's throats, not like a couple of cur dogs fighting over a bone. But I think that's the bottom line.
You know, this is what they do. Now, they pay, some of these people are actually paid. Some of them are just idiots. I mean, I don't know which is which. But if you are fighting against me, if you are fighting against you, and this has happened, as soon as you came on my show, they started trying to attack you financially through the courts. As a matter of fact, my show Monday will be discussing how someone is that I helped expose. I had my guest on, Grandma V.K. Durham, who controls a trust that's worth billions of dollars, but she don't have enough money to buy a cab or charter a cab. She got somebody brought her in, put her in a nursing home, tried to take over, and she fought them. She fought him, and she called me to tell me about it. I had her on my show, and she told her story on my show. And he's suing her and I right now. Right now. I just got some paperwork on it. They're suing, and they did the same thing for you. After I had you on my show, suddenly somebody wanted to take over your church. Odd how that works, isn't it?
Yeah, and she needs to be careful because one of the people we were helping in a nursing home around here went to the doctor's office, who is in real tight with the head of the local nursing home, and came out of there with a piece of paper that said that man had dementia. If they decide to give her that moniker, she's in real trouble because they can do whatever they want to her with her. The claim is with dementia, she can't think for herself or make proper decisions, so she's totally under their control.
They have done that. They tried to do that with me for a long time. Over in Russia, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the psychiatrist, were certifying people. I mean, if you mentioned the word Jew, it was an executable offense. If you pointed out that Marx and Lenin were Jewish.
Oh yeah.
Now the other thing, talking about this whole Jewish conspiracy, I mean, we're talking about 2% of the population. And how can these people have such control over us? I mean, people have asked me, why do you hate the Jews, Clay? I said, I don't necessarily hate them. I almost admire them. I mean, if us white boys got this together, we'd own the Federal Reserve, we'd own the Bank of England, we'd own the World Bank, we'd own the International Monetary Fund, and we could run it right for the benefit of the people. If it's being run by a Zionist...
Wasn't it your guy Rothschild that you exposed and did? And of course, this is an encyclopedia. It's not just you, some crazy guy out there on the edge. You can look it up in the encyclopedia. But Rothschild, back at the time of Hitler, if I remember right, you made a quote that again is in encyclopedias that if we can control their economy, their finances, their banking, we control them.
That's right. Doesn't matter who you vote for, and by the way, it's who counts the votes that matters, not who voted. So with the computers now, we know that the programs can be changed. So you're being told who you can vote for. And the other, we have donated of this last election. And I attribute this to high intelligence, as James Forrestal said. He told Joe McCarthy, if they were just stupid, occasionally they'd make a mistake in our favor. So we're not dealing with stupidity. We're dealing with people, 2% of the people that have been run. They worked for the Romans. They worked to keep the people in line. And when Jesus came along and threw them out of the temple and started telling you the truth of our religion, the truth of God, the truth of Christianity, the truth of Christ, is that we have God right here. We have God inside us. We have direct contact with God. And we don't need the Pharisees. We don't need the rabbis. We don't need the controllers. We've got direct contact with God, and I will be willing to bet that a 3-year-old child who has been raised with love can tell you what's good and what's evil. I'm not buying into the whole original sin. I don't think people have asked me, Jake, do you fear God? And my answer is, why should I? I'm doing His work. Why should I be afraid of my Father? Why should I be afraid of my Father?
It's true. The old Hebrew term fear, it meant respect. It doesn't mean we're supposed to cringe in our boots. It means we're supposed to respect Him. If you respect your Father, you try to obey Him because He's got all this stuff in the garage for you.
That's
But you hit on something. Let me follow that a little bit further through. I can tell everybody I'm the Bible scholar and all that. That's very biblical. And this is one of the faults of the current religiosity who call themselves churches. They love to beat people up with sin. I call it a sin bat. Where they got the term original sin is not biblical. That's not in the book. We were created by God to be perfect and in His image. His image is not corrupt. So to say we had original sin is incorrect. That you're exactly right. And to carry that on and say, well, everybody's born evil and they have to learn how to be good is inaccurate. God blew himself into each one of us, as you quoted. Dr. Luke says that the kingdom of God is within you. The problem is it's asleep. And if it's awakened by the right faction, then we will lean towards that way. But we are predominantly designed to be good, not evil. Oh yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That's one of my pet peeves with religiosity.
Well, the whole strategy is be afraid, be very, very afraid, be afraid of the devil, be afraid of God, be afraid of your government. I ain't going for it. I ain't going for it. You know, what are they going to threaten you?
Our media they're the best terrorists on the planet because they promote their agenda through fear. Be afraid of this, be afraid of that. And they keep on saying, here's what happened. All the news is bad. So what do? We run around, we got a nation that's in fear, and the only solution is Uncle Sam, who really isn't our uncle.
That's right. Now, let me see. Let's talk about
ran on that, and I'm not trying to badmouth Obama because everybody's done it, like you said, for the last probably 100 years, save a few. But they're trying to tell you the government is the answer to all of your problems, and they're absolutely the opposite. They're probably the root of most of my problems.
That's right. And look, we spent $1 billion. Let me repeat this. George Bush walked out of the office. Obama walked in. On his way out, George Bush gave the bankers who issued the money, who printed the money, the Federal Reserve notes, the Federal Reserve Bank, he handed them $2 trillion. Just handed it to them, gave it to them, and you got to pay interest on that, folks. To me, that is evil. Now,
how is it that the people up there in Washington who control Social Security aren't paying you and I interest on the Social Security money we put in there over the years, which should be giving us a balance sheet in our account of over millions of dollars, when I'm getting a paltry little barely get by some every month? It ought to be more like $3,000 or $4,000 a month if you do the accounting, if you do the math. And I can prove that with proper accounting procedures. If that truly was a savings account, which FDR intended it to be, then it would be accruing interest. Even at 1%, it would be a very huge sum by now. But there's no money there because it's all sucked off and put in what's known as the general fund, which is like their petty cash account, and they don't even record what they're doing with it. It's not even accountable because it's like their petty cash account.
What the whole communist goal was world government.
Yep.
Talking about with Lucifer or Satan at the top of the pyramid. Now, that symbolism has been laid in front of you and everywhere you look.
It's on the paper money.
It's on your money. That's right. It's what's the most revealing. That U.S. dollar has an Illuminati occult pyramid with the all-seeing eye of Lucifer, and the words in Latin Novus Ordo Seclorum, or New Order of the Ages, which means New World Order, printed on the back of it. And that's the all-seeing eye of Lucifer is clearly seen in numerous multinational corporation logos with our vast array of blatantly occult symbols. You know, one of the most apparent to me, go out and take a look at that Dodge pickup truck. Now, that's a Ram Tough, right? Ram Tough, man, and they got that Ram on the front of it, but inside that Ram is Moloch. That's Moloch. That is the goat. that is the goat. That
is a biblical God from the book of Kings and Chronicles. Very evil. They sacrificed children to that God in the Old Testament. It's the basis for Halloween, whether people want to go there or not, and that's in the encyclopedia. And you're exactly right. And they got little transponders in all the new ones too, so the government can find anytime they want.
That's right. Chip, this little chip, and it tells him, you know, when to take his medicine, tells the doctor everything about him, and including how much is in his bank account.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, folks. Aleister Crowley was the Great Beast 666. In 1904, he received supernatural communication from what he called petrohuman intelligence. And he was on. They put him on the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club album. Doesn't mean that the Beatles were bad necessarily. It means they were deluded. John Lennon actually tried to do something and tried to make a change and tried to do something good, and of course they killed him for it.
Right. Well, so did Kennedy. John Kennedy got in there as a card-carrying member of the mob. His dad's liquor money bought him in. But in there, somehow or another, he got the idea, and as you had covered in one of your magazines, he was going to do away with the Federal Reserve, and he was a whistleblower for some of this stuff we're talking about, and they took him out.
That's right. That's right. They did that, and I carry one of his $5 bills in my wallet.
You bet. And you know, that's one of the major reasons Ron Paul didn't get in any further than he did, because he wanted to do away with the Federal Reserve, and he does not sound like a politician, nor does he want to, and we're so indoctrinated into what the guy ought to look like if he's going to be in that position that everybody's following the wrong dream. The politician's not who we want. We want a manager. And I can tell you, Ron Paul would admit a dandy. But I think that these guys, you know, like trying to keep our schools open, they eventually crumble under the pressure of trying to keep going and cave into the other side.
I mean, Ron Paul was called anti-Semitic. He was called a racist. They tried to do the same thing to me. And Ron Paul was a subscriber to the Free American. I saw that he got the Free American for 10 years.
And he was the real deal. You and I both, I mean, he preached at the church that I had out here. I mean, he came out here and we stood in the rain talking about education and how we were going to do something about the mess in this country, until his guys around him said, well, you know, you can't catch cold out here. You're both going to get sick. And so we broke it up. But it was important enough to him to stand out in the rain with me in front of that church in the parking lot and discuss these things.
Now, let's talk about
his office a number of times. He's the real deal.
Let's talk about, I've met with Ron Paul too. I've sat with him, and in this last campaign, they did not, even though I had him on the cover of my magazine, his handlers, his son-in-law, wouldn't allow me to even talk to him. So they don't want anything, you know, they try to tarnish my reputation, and then they want to blame, try to tarnish anybody that even talks to me or supports me. But let's talk about that. Let's talk about it.
I think the good news is I'm seeing something, and I think you do too, and I know Randall Mock does, that there is an awakening. There are some people beginning to say, wait a minute, maybe these people are telling us the truth.
That's right. I think we are having an effect. And I just did Jack McClam's show on Genesis, and I talked about that. Jack McClam put out the Vampire Killer and sent that out to police and soldiers, and so he woke a lot of people up. He woke a lot of soldiers up, and that's why the veterans have been targeted by Homeland Security, which is nothing more than the KGB with a new name.
They're actually worse because they're subversive. At least the KGB was right out there saying we are what we are, but these people are under the guise of a protection for the people when they're really looking at our pants. And I don't know, that whole thing, again, it's communist.
All right. I get this whole communism thing. You know, I've got quotes again up on my site that say this is from Jewish rabbis. Jewish rabbis have come out and made the statement that, let me see here, let me pull this up. It's really a war against humanity, but they have said, some call it communism, I call it Judaism for the masses. It's, this was walking the street. Where were my ancestors? And my ancestors, as far as I can go back, were Germans. Now, Christian identity says, and Christian identity has been attacked also by, like the militias, like the veterans. In the days of Jesus, where were my ancestors? Weren't they standing there with the apostles? Weren't they standing there listening to Jesus? Where did we come from? We didn't just appear on this continent. We didn't just appear in Europe. We came from there. We are the Hebrews. We are the ones that followed God's word and went out and produced the Bible in every language, printed it, and tried to get it out to everybody.
Right. Well, we're the new Israel. The pretenders to it don't want to tell you that they've been set aside 400 years before Jesus showed up. They had been set aside. Jesus brought that message that he says, I'm here to fix things, to them first, exclusively to them, and they rejected it. Then he turned around and he says, all right, Judah, all the rest of you guys, whoever you are, here it is. If you get it and you follow me, you are New Israel. You are my chosen people. You're a funny, peculiar people, but you're mine. So any way you want to couch that, yes, we are. And anybody who says, well, you have to be this or that to get in, the only thing you have to be is following him.
Now, let me ask you something else. I've gotten into trouble about this in Sunday school, about the whole Adam and Eve story. The Christian identity, some of the Christian identity I've had in there, say that that Satan went down, made love to Eve, had Cain, and became, that all the evil sprang from that. That seems to me to be out of the Talmud, not the Bible.
You're right. That's a misconstruing and a conglomeration of Genesis 1, 2, and 6. And 1 and 2 do not coincide with 6. There's a 1500 to 2,000 year separation at least. In the garden, I can prove, if I read the scriptures, I can prove that there was not, God didn't cease with Adam and Eve. It wouldn't make sense to do so. He made animals, not two of them. He made Adam and Eve and continued on. That's where Cain found his wife when he was, run off out of the garden, and he said, go find your wife. The problem with the angels coming down, kicked out of heaven, is in Genesis 6, and it says that. It says they married or procreated with human virgins and created this major monster race that was very large and very violent and very aggressive. And that falls right in with what you're talking about. And it is the evil that pervades throughout the whole of the world, I guess, at the time, is the reason for the flood. Now you go after the flood, because we came out of that as a unified, from a single entity, Noah and his family, then you're looking at all of us having the same origin. So you can't be excluded as one of God's people because you were from Noah. Everybody got together, went to the Tower of Babel, and that's when he scattered everybody, changed their look. Yeah, they went to Germany, they went to this continent, they went all over the place. They had different looks and different language. That's biblical. And it was a problem that started with the guys kicked out of heaven who were the third of the angels, Revelation 12, who procreated with human virgins and created that major race. They also probably were very intelligent. They could have been Mayan. I mean, you can start piecing this thing together however you want.
Yeah, in what I wrote 45 years ago, my characters in there were real people, and I tried to give a human face to them. And they lived in Atlantis. They lived in a sunken continent. They lived, before it was sunk. They went through a disaster similar to what we could be approaching right here.
You bet.
And
if there's a lining up of the planets, like is indicated by the Mayan mentality, their scientific, whatever it was at the time, technology, if there's a lining up of the planets, and we know technically that is probable, then it's going to change some chemistry. It's going to change some of the stuff that goes on. We're going to get more violent weather probably.
Yes, well, that's happening, and the earthquakes are happening. 7.3 magnitude earthquake called a Lander's quake up, and a 6.4 off the coast of California.